Kentucky Republican Congressman and, importantly, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, joins me now. Mr. Chairman, always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Major.
So when does this get settled? And when you hear references to this odious fine print in the Senate deal, what are your colleagues talking about?
I think we were surprised and disappointed that the Senate had a deal at, was it 3 a.m. in the morning? There was no communication with Mike Johnson. It was almost like a shady kind of negotiation to where there was no input or even a heads up to the members of the House. And that's not the way a leader's supposed to act. It's very unfortunate because no one wants to get this resolved more than I do. I'm frustrated that Congress can't do its basic fundamental job, and that's to pass appropriations bills. Even though we've appropriated probably 99% of the federal government, there's still that 1% that's very important to Homeland Security when we're at a potential state of war with the Middle East. We've got criminal illegals in many of the cities in the United States. We've got drugs now entering through the coastline since the southern border is secure. So there's never been a greater need for Homeland Security funding than now.
So when your constituents, who are reasonable people, say to you, Mr. Chairman, I can't leave my job for 2 weeks and go on recess or holiday or district work period or whatever you want to call it if I don't get my job done, how come you can do that?
Well, again, I think everyone's probably become accustomed to government shutdowns, and that's a terrible attitude to have from the American people. But I believe that's one of the reasons that more members of Congress aren't in a bigger hurry to try to get an agreement resolved. But at the end of the day, we could be there for 3 more weeks, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. If the Democrats aren't going to support anything with respect to Homeland Security funding, then I don't know how what good it does being in Washington. If I were President Trump, I wouldn't want Congress in session. Congress is broken, especially in the Senate. And there are not a lot of Democrats other than Senator Fetterman and 1 or 2 Democrats in the House that are even willing to consider crossing the line to vote on bipartisan measures. So it's very frustrating time to be in Congress. And that's why you're seeing so many members of the House of Representatives announce a retirement.
More than 50. Mr. Chairman, a couple of my colleagues here at CBS wrote a story last week about California, hospice, Medicare, and Los Angeles, finding, by California's own standards, lots and lots of potential red flags for fraud. What is your committee going to do about that?
Well, first of all, I want to brag on CBS. You did a great job of investigative reporting on this. That's what we need in oversight. We need curious journalists who do a good job investigating waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement in the federal government. And you've done a great job on California. There's also an audit to back up the fact that there's a massive amount of hospice fraud, particularly in Los Angeles County. And what's already apparent is there were very few guardrails. There was just opportunity after opportunity for people to go to the UPS store and get a post office box and create a company and start sending out fake invoices to receive funding, much like what we've seen in Minnesota with the learning centers and some of the other welfare programs. But this hospice fraud is the worst I've seen, because that's one program that every American supports. If anyone, and my family's had members that have gone through hospice, it's an invaluable service. And it's always hard to find funding for hospice because it's so expensive. But to see that there's such a massive amount was spent in one county, it appears that 18% of the entire amount of hospice billing in America last year went to Los Angeles County. You had thousands and thousands of people who were registered to be hospice providers, but yet they had mysterious addresses that in their bedrooms of their apartment buildings, and you can't get anyone to return the call. We've been going down the list like you all have been at CBS, calling some of these hospice providers and we can't even get a return phone call. So it's very concerning. I know that the Department of Justice is taking this seriously. J.D. Vance has recently been appointed to be
Right.
kind of in charge of fraud in general. So hopefully we'll be able to find out more.
I want to ask you about something that happened late last week regarding Jeffrey Epstein. Bank of America reached a settlement, $72.5 million with Epstein's survivors. A court needs to approve it. But, Mr. Chairman, you know this. At $72.5 million from Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase, $290 million, Deutsche Bank, $75 million. That totals $437.5 million in settlements from banks who do not like to part with their money. What does that tell you about what they're trying to avoid and what may have gone wrong? And should there be any criminal remedies for these things that are being settled?
Yeah, look, that's one reason the documents have been difficult to turn over by the federal government. There are so many class action lawsuits ongoing with the victims of Epstein. It's hard when you've got settlements that have been made, class action lawsuits that have been settled, class action lawsuits that are pending. That's a challenge to disclosing some of the documents. But at the end of the day, I think whether you're the Trump Department of Justice, whether you were the Biden Department of Justice, Obama Department of Justice, whether you're the House Oversight Committee or a Senate Investigative Committee, we all want to see people convicted. No one wants to protect anyone that was involved in Epstein's terrible crimes. But I think what we're learning and what we're seeing is it's very difficult to prosecute. You have some of the main witnesses like Epstein who are dead now, and you've got crimes that were committed 20 years ago. One thing that I think we can say with confidence is the federal government failed the victims. The federal government did a terrible job of prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein. And we're trying to get the truth to the American people. We want to see people prosecuted. We brought in some of the main bad actors like Lex Wexner, who said under oath that they didn't really have a close relationship with Epstein. That's very hard for me to believe. But with Epstein dead, and the victims who have signed, settlements and agreements, the non-disclosure agreements, it's very difficult to prove otherwise. We're doing the best we can. I think the federal government's doing the best it can in turning over the documents. We've gotten all the documents from the estate turned over, but we're still trying to get some convictions.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, before I let you go, you said the federal government made a mistake. Did the Trump Justice Department make a mistake in 2019 when it asked and basically ordered the state of New Mexico to stop its investigation into Zorro Ranch, where Jeffrey Epstein, it is now clear, abused young women?
It looks like that decision came, yes, from the Trump Department of Justice, but specifically from the Southern District of New York. And, Ms. Comey was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. We probably will have some questions for her with respect to that. We've been very critical of Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney with the first shot at Epstein in the Florida district. So the many presidential administrations, departments of justice, have made huge mistakes in not getting Jeffrey Epstein and allowing him to continue to commit crimes. So there's plenty of fault to go around. But I think that particular deal in New Mexico, yes, that was a huge mistake. I believe it was more from the Southern District of New York, to be specific, but it was in the Trump Department of Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.